Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I am back with another video. This video is actually part of a YouTube video hop for the new Crafty Meraki release. So this set that I'm using is called All You Need Is Love. It has this beautiful large floral image, and I think I cut it out and I didn't even mean to, but on the back of it, which is super cool, they actually have a hand-colored photo, so you can see what it looks like all colored up, and that is colored by Brenda Nolke, who is I'm on a couple of different teams with her, and she's super talented, so I just thought that that was super cool. But anywho, this is like the fastest card. I know the video is still long, but this is like my go-to technique when I just need something really fast that I know I'm going to get good results with. So here what I'm doing is I'm working on Canson Monteval watercolor paper. That's my preferred watercolor paper. But then the ink is important because we're going to be watercoloring and using alcohol markers. You need an ink that does both. So is waterproof as well as safe for alcohol markers. So for me, I used the intensified black ink from Hero Arts, and I did end up having to stamp this down a couple of times just because watercolor paper is textured and sometimes it can be hard to get a good first impression. Anyway, back to the YouTube hop. There's prizes, there's tons of talented people on this hop. So if you are just watching my video because you happen to be a follower of mine, please make sure you head up the description and hop along to see all of the super cute things from this release, as well as all of the amazing talented designers and the ideas that they have for you. So once my stamping is done, like I said, textured paper, new stamp, I should have probably done something to season it, but I didn't. So here, let's talk about this color scheme. This is the thing that will make this work like a no fail. You have to use analogous colors. All analogous colors means is that they are next to each other on the color wheel. So for me, I'm going to use a blue, violet, red, violet, but you could use any of the combinations. You can't go too far. You can only do 3-4 colors, because like let's say you wanted to use violet, and red, that'd be great. But once you start getting into the oranges or the yellow oranges, it's not going to mix well with your violet because they're so close to being complementary colors. So here I knew I wanted to use seedless preserves and picked raspberry, and then I could have gone candied apple, but that felt very Valentine's Day. And I've been making a lot of Valentine's cards. So I decided to nix that, and then I would add in the blue. The blue that I chose is Prize Ribbon. It is more of a purple blue versus a blue-green. And so I knew that they would work really well together. Alternatively, you could do red, orange, and yellow. That would work nicely. Yellow, green, and blue-green. That would work nicely. Blue-green, blue... You could probably do the blue violets, but I don't know that it would look super pretty. Anyway, the point is you want to use ones that are next to each other so that they play nice with this technique. What is the technique, you ask? I'm so glad that you did. Let me tell you. It is basically we're just laying down clean water. You can make this as messy, which is my preferred look, or as clean, which is how I did it today, as you would like. I mean cleanish. It's not super clean. And basically, I'm just going in. I'm using a number 8 round brush because this is such a large image, and I'm just laying down clean water. Anywhere that is wet is where your pigment will flow. So don't get anything wet that you don't want to get color on. So for me, that meant I avoided the leaves on the outskirts, the berries on the outskirts. I didn't put any clean water in there because they're such small areas. I wanted to have more control over them. So basically, just the large section in the middle. And then from there, I am going to pick up my pigment and I'm going to drop it totally randomly. You can do as much or as little. You can do a gradient. You can do what I did and just kind of drop a little bit all over the place. However you want to apply your color. Please keep in mind that watercolors dry back quite a bit, which means they dry lighter than they look when they're wet. So if you want like super dark, intense color, using distress inks, just how I did, like smushed it down on my glass mat, and I'm using that as a palette, the super dark intense color look is harder to achieve with this because you're just using a little bit of the ink and probably, you know, a decent amount of water. So it lightens everything up. If you're looking for something that's super intense, I have showed in other videos where you can watercolor with distress re-inkers, which is like the concentrated color. That is much easier to get a bolder look if that's what you're going for. Because while I choose to do this as like my underpainting, because I think that watercolors are beautiful, the way that they blend together and the water moves them, and like that's the look that I like. That's why I choose that you know, medium. Not everybody wants to go in with Copic markers afterward, and I totally understand that. I do because I like the depth and the shading that it gives me. But if you don't want to do that and you want just bolder color on the onset, which would still make this a beautiful card, then you may want to use the re-inkers. And also any other watercolor mediums that you have. Like if you have regular, like I have Daniel Smith's, that would work for this. You know, the koi ones, the, oh, what were they? I have them somewhere. It's the big green palette. I keep thinking Sukaneko, but that's not right. It was the big green palette, and it had all the pans. They were super thick and really pigmented. I can't remember because it's been so long since I used them. I should find those. I bet you they're in my watercolor drawer. I bet you they are. Now I'm going to have to look those up and see. So now here, at this point, I've painted on my first layer, and I'm going to do some splatters. That's why I said it was clean-ish. Not everybody likes the splatters, and that's fine. Just like not everybody likes the kind of messier edges, the looser watercolor, which I do, and I've done several of those in the past. But here I'm just doing splatters in each of the colors. Some of them are, you know, a little bit more washed out with more water. Some of them are a bit more concentrated. I like having a good mix, but you can certainly do whatever works for you. So now this underlayer has dried, and so I have reapplied my palette, and then here you can go in and you can actually like paint super detailed if you want to. You can add your shadows with your color. I'm not going to do that because I feel more comfortable and more competent with alcohol markers, but that is definitely something that you could do instead of using the markers and make it a true watercolor piece versus more of a mixed media. But I will tell you that I'm using less water. I'm not completely covering the whole thing like I did previously. I'm putting down little pockets of water and then I'm kind of dabbing color into it. And this is just to increase the intensity of the colors until I am happy with it. The picked raspberry for me is almost never as intense as I want it to be when I use this type of painting. Like it's just never... It's never enough. It's never as bright as I want it to be. And recently in a video I used it for a background and I ended up just taking the pad and putting it right on the background so that I could get the intensity of color that I wanted. I don't know why that one is that way, and I contemplated getting out my re-inker to just fix the problem, but I didn't. I just powered through and it ended up being okay. So we're just going to continue doing this painting. I am going to speed it up at some point when we do the Copic coloring, just because obviously it did take quite a bit of time. I mean, it's faster than most of my cards. Let me say that. Like most cards take me about 2.5 hours, especially if it's a scene card. This card, start to finish with all of the things and the dry time, took me about an hour. So this is really fast. And if you're not as... like you don't take as many breaks as me, you don't have as many interruptions, like you could totally knock this out with a heat gun in probably 20 minutes. It would just depend on how particular you were. I am a little bit more so, and I got kiddos and I take a lot of breaks. So there's that. But anywho, so I had recently posted a video and I asked you guys about retirement sales. Oh no, we have to talk about, like, I don't even know if we're gonna have time for story time because there's so many things to teach you. So here, what I'm doing is I have picked out a couple of alcohol markers that match-ish, like as close as I could get to the colors in my background. And what I'm doing here is I am figuring out what colors I can use to add a dimension without it needing to be blended. So I started with a true green, And obviously that works with the blue, but it doesn't work with the other two. The yellow green works with the blue, doesn't work with the other two. Like, it starts to get funky. So I switched over to a blue green, and we're getting closer. It just wasn't dark enough. And so I chose another blue green, and it was a little bit too dark. And here is where I figured I was going to have to use 2 of the blue greens and be okay with it. So now I'm working on finding colors that will be similar enough that I will be able to blend them with my watercolor. And so I settled on an RV66, a VO4, and a B, I think it's a 26. I'll show you here in a second. And then I wanted to make sure those colors blended together. The reason for the blue-green is to have something for my leaves. Before I start my coloring, I want to make sure that my paper is completely dry. If it's cool to the touch, even though it's not like visibly wet, it is still wet in the fibers of the paper, and you need to make sure it's dry before you're adding anything else to it. It was a B26. Good for me. So I chose the blue greens as a way to kind of bring the leaves out, like still be able to add shading to my flowers with the other like analogous colors, but the blue-green isn't that far out of the realm. It is technically still analogous if you're going the other way. So you would start with the blue-green, then the blue. The blue-violet is obviously created from the mix of colors, and then the violet, and then the red-violet. So they're still technically analogous, which is why you can use them over these colors and they don't make mud. But like going with a green that has a lot of yellow in it is not gonna work. It's gonna be more more likely to make brown or to make muddy colors. So here I add my shading a little differently than normal. Normally I go lightest to darkest, darkest to lightest, but here I'm really just going in with the same colors and I'm adding shadows where 2 points meet, and I'm adding shadows where one object lays on top of another. I'm not adding any shading to my letters though. I wanted them to be lighter so that they would kind of pop forward, and I have a little trick for how I do that to kind of separate them from the rest of what's going on in the background. But basically you just want to go in and add, you can, if you're more comfortable with little lines of color, you can do that. If you're comfortable flicking, you could, you know, maybe flick out a little bit of darker color. But basically we're just trying to create some shadows and some depth and dimension in these florals. Without having to do a whole lot of real work or having a whole lot of markers to choose from. That's the goal. So anyway, I asked you guys about this retirement sale, and I had no idea you would have such strong feelings about it. So there was a couple of things that I just wanted to tackle. The first one being, several of you were like, you know, I don't like having new product pushed on me. And I totally get that. I like using older sets. With that said, I also like using newer sets. And so here on my channel, I genuinely try to find a good balance between using stuff that I've had in my stash for years and using stuff that is new, just like I'm sure you guys do as well. You know, sometimes you can afford new stamps and sometimes you can't. Sometimes you're making a card for someone and you have this stamp set that you actually bought 5 years ago, but you know it would be perfect to make this card and you don't need anything new for it. Some of you, it's the beginning of the year and you're like, I'm on a spending freeze. You know, I spent all my money during the sales at Christmas. Like, I get all of those things because before I was a creator that did this for a job, I was also a customer. And to be honest, I still am. Like, I still purchase, you know, stamps and consumables and all of those things. So I'm looking for the same things that you guys are looking for. But I do understand that companies, even though it's very frustrating to me, so like that particular video, that stamp set I had owned for 6 months and they were already retiring it. So I understand that they have overhead. I understand that they only have so much room in their warehouse and they can't hold on to something that isn't selling. I totally get that. As a creator, that's very frustrating for me. I like when companies come out with stamp sets and they have them for years. Like, that you can keep using them and get the most money out, you know, most bang for your buck kind of thing. That is my preferred. So just to address that for people who made that comment, like, you know, I don't want to be being sold something. Like, I totally understand that. But at the same time, like one of the ways that I talk to you guys and I ask you to support me is through affiliate links. I am not saying that like, hey, you need to buy all the things. All I'm asking is when you're in a position to buy something, if you could think of me and use my affiliate link, or if you're inspired by a card and you want to purchase something that I'm using, please use my affiliate link. Because that helps me create more free content here on YouTube to share with you guys. Because like I said, I am still a customer. I still have to buy these things. So there's a reel out there that's like the audio for it is like marketing is wild, because I have to be like, I want you to like me, but professionally. And I have to say it in a way that is natural to tell you how awesome I am, but not in a way that is going to turn you off from my product. Like, it's hysterical because that is true. Like, do I think that I have something to offer you, to teach you, to share with you? Yes, I do. Do I still need to keep my electricity on and food in my kids' mouths? Also, yes. So it's a tricky line to walk, and I think that there's like people don't address it because it's uncomfortable, because maybe they don't want the feedback. I am glad that you guys shared your feedback with me. I genuinely appreciate that we can have that conversation. So please know that I am never going to push you to buy like the newest, funnest, all the things. Like I don't think that you need all of the things. I just ask that if you see something that you love, for example, this All You Need Is Love stamp set. It's a beautiful set. I think it's great. And if you see it and you're like, I love it and I can think of 5 different ways to use it, because I really do like the sentiments. Like the sentiments in it include like mother and sister and all those things, so that you can really kind of showcase it in several ways, which I think is great. But anyway, like that you would use my affiliate. That's all. So what you just saw me do was the way that I use to bring those letters forward, which is by adding a cast shadow. So I like to add my shadows down and to the left, but you can add them any way that you would like. And then in order to further bringing them forward, I'm also going to do some white gel pen accents on the opposite side of my shadow, and this is going to help bring it forward, give it a more rounded appearance, and create that dimension so that it stands out from all these beautiful florals. In addition, I added white highlights to the berries in the bunch, and then I also added some white highlights into the center of the flowers, where the centers, these are peonies obviously, where the centers were visible. I also added some clear glitter because I love all the glittery things, so I added that as well. Just be aware that sometimes this can reactivate your watercolor, and so you might want to be aware that you're dragging color. I hit some of the like tips of the flowers where they're the lightest and would maybe catch some shimmer, and then I'm going to move on to the sentiment. So the sentiments in these are all like negatives. So you stamp the area around them, and because I wanted this to be a bold black, I did not even mess around with the dye ink. I went straight to a pigment ink. For me, that's Altenew Obsidian, because it's a super dark, solid black. I did end up stamping this twice because, again, I don't prep my stamps. Is that very professional? Meh, probably not. Is that what you get on my channel? Yes, yes it is. So I did stamp this twice, and then I trimmed it out in order to get the black around the edges. Because it's seeping into black, you probably could use an alcohol marker, but just to be safe, I did use a water-based marker. And so this is my Memento Tuxedo Black, and I'm just going around and coloring the edges. That way, when you look at it, it doesn't have like these white sides that are showing through. And then I'm going to pop this up on foam. In good news, my son cleaning his room, that's a whole nother saga. But him cleaning his room, he had shoved a bunch of stuff underneath his desk and his bed, thinking, I don't know, that I wouldn't look underneath his desk and his bed. And so when I was pulling all of this crap out from underneath there, like trucks and drawings and just stuff he shoved under there, I found a roll of the old foam tape that he had taken from me. So now I have the good stuff back again, at least for a little bit. Let's talk about these rhinestones. I gotta grab them because I can't remember the name. So these rhinestones are from Crafty Meraki as well. These ones are called Sparkle Magic Crystal. I think. Okay, they're awesome. They're like rainbow. And so I appeared to be a surgeon there with my quick sticks and my glue, but I did have to adhere them down. Totally worth it. They're super pretty. And then that is the whole card. So thank you guys so much for joining me, for sharing your feedback with me, for us being able to have that open communication is so important. And then please continue on the hop. For me, I'm actually the last stop, so if you've missed it, you'll want to go back to the beginning at the Crafty Meraki channel, and I will link to them below. Thank you guys so much for your time, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.